Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dynasty Junkies, episode 182 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast. And this is your host, Andrew Hall at Andrew Hall FF. You can also see to my right, I guess, depending on how you're looking at it, you can see the one and only Rocky Petrella. How you doing, Rocky?
Yeah, doing good. It's been a little while since we've been on here together. So happy to be back with you, Andrew, and happy to be here with a great guest tonight.
Yeah. Excited to talk it up tonight with one of the up and coming people who's been in the leagues for a long time, who's been playing fantasy for a while. I forget what your last name is, Jeff. Do you want to tell everybody what your last name is, or do you want to stay mysterious?
No, it's fine. It's Crisp, opposite of Soggy.
Perfect. All right, we got Jeff Crisp on the show with us tonight at FFCommish_YIS. Yours in service. I love that whole idea. And again, this is your first time on podcast. We met at the Scott Fish Bowl. Why don't you tell people what your history and background is in Dynasty before we get too deep tonight?
Well, I've been playing fantasy for a long time. Back, I'm old enough to remember the, fax and newspaper days. So, I transitioned to, the Yahoos and the ESPNs, and then eventually made it over to Sleeper. It was, I think my first Dynasty league was in 2017. We had been in a couple keeper leagues, and a friend of mine, Jeff Abercrombie, had mentioned a Dynasty league and getting a Dynasty league going. He said, "Do you want to run it?" I said, "I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to learn and I'll do it." So we threw it together, and that was my first Dynasty league. I've been playing in Dynasty league since, and I'm probably in about, 10 right now.
Nice. 10's the way to be. Rocky, do you remember when you were in 10 leagues?
This is too long ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think I'm in like 40 if you count the redrafts, but some of those are best balls. They don't count.
Nearing I was at 40. I've cut down. I think I'm like 35 now.
I did cut down my Dynasty leagues finally. I'm doing a bunch of charity redraft leagues, but those are a little bit easier. Not quite as much emphasis on the off season, which is nice. But so 10's good though. 10's that's a serious number. You're not amateur anymore. You're pro status.
Well, I have about 20 if you include the keeper and redraft leagues I'm in. So, but Dynasty about 10.
Perfect. All right.
One of them a Debbie.
Well, and I was going to say, I know that we met at Scott Fish Bowl, and you ran the Scott Fish Bowl in Michigan. There were, I think you said before we started, you had 2 drafts that you ran there in Battle Creek. How'd all that go? If anyone's curious, I guess, and in the Michigan area, maybe they were attending, or maybe they can attend next year.
Well, I think it went very well. We had, we had 2 divisions, 24 very enthusiastic people who were looking forward to the draft. Most of them were first-time live drafters. A few of them had been in Scott Fish Bowl slow drafts prior to SFB 14. It was a different location. We were up on the mezzanine of Dacey's Sportsbook Tap House at Firekeepers. It kind of kept us away a little bit from the crowds, but it was also nice that everybody could see us. They could come up if they wanted to. I think people were really excited by the silent auction items that we were bidding on. At one point, we had a mystery Detroit Lions signed memorabilia. We didn't know if it was going to be a Barry Sanders jersey or a hat. It ended up being a Derek Barnes football, and that went well. So, I think for the first draft, for myself, I thought it went very well. It went a lot better, and I think that in part was because I went to Cleveland and then I drafted in Cincinnati. I got to see John Bosch and everyone in action in both those locations. And that helped settle me down. And it also allowed me to kind of tweak some of the things I planned on doing. So it was really great. I'm looking forward to SFB 15. I'm already trying to recruit people, get out there and sign up on Scott Fish Bowl /apply and get signed up and declare your interest for Michigan.
Love it. That's the way to be. And Scott Fish Bowl is the one league that brings everybody together, right? Go sign up for Scott Fish Bowl if you haven't already. Do a live draft. Go to a 10 live drafts if you haven't. Even if you're not in the draft, you don't have to be in the draft. Just go have fun. Scott Fish Bowl is meant to be a time where we can all kind of get together and kick off the season right. So glad you're with us tonight, Jeff. And again, this is one of, if not your very first podcast. So we're glad to pop your cherry tonight. This is going to be a good time. But let's get right into the news. Yeah, hey now. Even though there isn't that much news. I put a couple little things on the sheet. Training camps opened up finally, and I say finally as a Dynasty player because it's just feels like that non-point scoring season takes a while to get here. But man, when this season get here, I'm excited. I'm ready to go. But then, we can get into the blurbs, but I don't really feel like there's a lot of need unless you guys want to. Is there anything that stands out maybe? Or how about this, a different way to take it? Is there any news you're looking forward to hearing, Rocky? Or like bad news that you're afraid of or anything like that maybe related to the offseason that we're, getting into now?
Nothing I can think of that I'm looking forward to. And bad news, I just hope we don't. You never want injuries, so
Yeah, no
that's
injuries.
the news that we're most likely to get probably over the next month. In terms of real, actual news, is somebody getting an injury. So I'm not going to wish that on anybody. I'm going to just shut up about it right now. Not
Good
jinx it.
call. Good call. Leave it at that. Jeff,
Yep.
anything you want to hear or not want to hear other than that, which we're not going to mention again?
No, I agree with Rocky. I just hope never to hear anything negative. You get a lot of different things out of training camp. You get a lot of spins, so I tend to ignore that. It's usually for me as a Lions fan, I'm sure you can see my background. I'm kind of a Lions fan, and I've been to several training camps. I haven't been to one since before COVID, and I meant to get to this year's and just didn't do it. But I know that's always a great time in Allen Park, Michigan. But I agree with Rocky. Just don't want to hear any bad news.
No, I like that, and I think really the negative news means more in general, and the drumbeat and kind of hearing things over and over from multiple places. Other than that, take everything with a grain of salt, guys. Don't believe everything you read. Don't fall for the first clip. Like, do some checking. Have some good literacy on social media. We need better at that anyway. Just go make sure that what you're seeing and what you're hearing is true before you go posting crazy things. Because the other thing we see a lot this time of year is those fake accounts come up and start making, stupid troll post kind of things, and just hold on, just be careful, but have fun out there. That being said, the only other real news, and I put the term news in quotes, right, is Michael Gallup retired. I had him on one league out of all of mine, and I didn't mind dropping him after this news. It wasn't like I was excited about him or anything, but is that even news? That's the question for you, Rocky. Does that count as news or not really?
No, not really. Michael Gallup was a little exciting. I think his second year is when he kind of broke out a little bit, and then it's been all downhill since then anyway. No one was depending on Michael. I'm sure he's on many rosters just because he's a name everybody recognizes. Probably not on waivers in most leagues. But yeah, he will be now. So I'm not that upset about Michael Gallup retiring. It doesn't do much for me. I kind of had forgotten about it until I saw you put it on the sheet here.
Well, there you go. That's perfect. Jeff, what about you? As someone who's been playing Dynasty for a while, is it sad that Michael Gallup has retired, or is it not even register on your radar?
From a fantasy perspective, I didn't even give it a second thought. I did I'm in one Dynasty league, a 14 team. It has some of the content creators in that league, and I thought I had him on my roster, but I didn't, so I didn't have to drop him. So I don't have him anywhere else, so it's someone else's problem.
I like that. That's the way to be. All right. So that's all we need for news and notes, unless there's anything else you guys want to throw at me. But again, just that's not what we do here, guys. You know this. Let's get into the meat of this. So tonight, obviously, we got Jeff on here, and I was talking with Jeff at the Cincy draft. I think we had a really good time. I think it was a lot of fun drafting live in Cincinnati. But really what we got into after the draft was talking about commissioner stuff and just like talking as commissioners. Because Jeff, you mentioned to me, you commission a bunch of leagues. Why don't you get a little bit into that so people know a little bit about what we're talking about here?
So I've commissioned leagues for, many years, but I never really took it seriously. And then in 2012, a friend of mine, we were actually going to Lions training camp, and we were talking about how there were so many people we knew that were disgusted with leagues they were in. Like we've all been in. There have been leagues that just bad commissioners, bad rules, bad or no rules at all, people doing whatever. And we wanted something serious. And so by the time that we returned from that training camp, we had everything laid out. So we were able to find 8 other guys. It was a 10-team league at first, and we found 8 other guys who were, felt the same way we did. And we started Last Bastion of Goal Line Defiance Fantasy Football League, and it's been running ever since. Most of the GMs have been there, if not since year 1, year 3 or so. We've had a couple people who've left, but it's been a solid league. And from there, I started moving into other leagues. That's when I started my Dynasty commissionership. Started one, which we had some unique rules with claim periods and unprotected players. Then we got into an IDP. That was I never played IDP before. And I was said, hey, commit IDP league. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so my first year was really bad. And my third year was really bad. We'll just,
hey, welcome to Dynasty, brother. It's all a perpetual rebuild. You're in.
Great commissioner, horrible GM, but moving on. And then from there, every couple of years, a new league was created and a new league was developed. And I think I've got, like I said, I think I'm commissioning 5 dynasty leagues, a couple redraft leagues, a few keeper leagues. I think of my 20 some leagues I'm in, I think 10 of them are I commish, 10 or 11. I can't even keep track anymore.
Amen to that. Rocky, how many do you commission? I know you're in a few and you commission a few. I'm just curious because I haven't really checked with you recently. How many are you running these days?
I was just pulling up my MFL to try and figure
Well,
that
while
out.
you pull that up, I'll stall for you. I am really just commissioning. I think it's 3 leagues that I'm co-commissioner of, and all of those are really just because the regular full-time commissioner was like, debating on if they wanted to step down or fold the league, and I was like, well, I'll jump in and help out to keep things going, and because I mean, there's nothing worse than a commissioner leaving a league and kind of everybody scrambling. So I was like, well, I don't mind being a co-commissioner because that gives us some options. So I kind of like the co-commissioner status. Where you can kind of bounce ideas off someone, but I mean, no faults, no hate to the solo commissioners out there. It's just that's a lot of work. So taking on half of it seems better to me. But Rocky, did you come up with that number?
Yeah, in terms of dynasty leagues, I believe it's 8. I had a home league that I was commissioning that I'm still in, but stepped back from commissioning this year. So it was 9 up until a few months ago. But 8, all of which are more like online, Twitter, that kind of phone people from other leagues and things like that. So 8 leagues, and I do commission one sort of redraft league that I run, this weird league that's kind of based around Survivor. So people get voted out and stuff. So that's a weird one though. So that's kind of a whole different animal. So
that's one way to put it. Yeah, that is a unique league. Yes.
Yeah. So it's 8 leagues, 8 dynasty leagues.
Very nice. All right. So, and Jeff, I know when we were talking about getting you on for this, I feel like we don't really do a lot of commissioner talk on this show, but I feel like a lot of dynasty managers end up commissioning leagues anyway. Most of the time, from my experience, dynasty managers are just more plugged in. They're more hardcore. They're more interested in it. And I know a lot of different dynasty leagues that I'm in have a lot of other people that are managers of other leagues or commissioners of other leagues. I know there's some that I'm in that have redraft commissioners in them, but it's like they're just getting into dynasty. So I guess where I was trying to get with this is, as someone who's kind of not new to dynasty and not new to commissioning, but new to podcasting, right? Your opinions may not be out there yet. And I felt like maybe we could use this as a time to kind of branch out and expose some new ideas. And you actually came up with this referees. I want you to go through that because I think that's a really good idea for new commissioners or even just regular league mates to show their commissioners and kind of get into the weeds of where you came up with that and what all that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So referees, it's something that guides me to try to be the best commissioner possible. And it's an acronym that refers to 8 values that drive my mission as commissioner. And those 8 values are rules, enforcement, fairness, equality, responsibility, engagement, enthusiasm, and stability. So again, every league I commish, we start off with rules. I mean, this is nothing unique or there's nothing profound about this. To be successful as a commissioner or as a league, it's imperative that there are comprehensive rules and bylaws by which the league is operated and all decisions are made. And while those rules cannot be written to cover every contingency, just ask any commissioner addressing the canceled Damar Hamlin game, most aspects of the league are known and can be, delineated within the rules. And again, I don't dictate those rules. The rules shouldn't be dictated by a commissioner. Instead, It should be a collaboration of the league's franchises or GMs. And this helps ensure everyone in the league has a voice regardless. But I always make sure there's a clause in there to ensure that the commissioner has unilateral authority to do what is in best interest and integrity of the league. And that's just a blanket coverage for anything that might come up that simply isn't explicit in the rules. So that's the first thing that's very important. Then you have enforcement. There's no need for rules if the commissioner is neither willing or prepared to enforce those rules.
Yep.
To avoid disputes as much as possible, the enforcement of the rules, for me, it has to be consistent and it has to be expeditious. So you got to make a quick decision. Everybody's waiting. There's games on the line. If something's happening on a Saturday or a Sunday, you have to make a decision. So there should rarely be circumstances that would require a commissioner to deviate from those explicit rules. Then F, fairness. A commissioner should always strive to be fair, not only in the enforcement of the rules, but in all aspects of the commissioner's discharge of duties. So the commissioner, I think, in my opinion, and this is what I do, should always monitor dialogue, activities, scoring, and results throughout the season to ascertain if there's any kind of unfair advantage in the league. I also think that as a commissioner, I immediately act if there's a significant threat to the integrity of the league. But that, again, rarely ever happens.
You can't have it get out of whack because something's not fair. I completely agree. Like that's where that clause comes in handy for like trades that are out of whack or different things. Yeah, no, I love that. Yep.
And then most of the time what I'll do is I don't do anything immediately. What I usually do is I take my notes and I wait until the winter or the spring meeting, and then I present those observations to everyone for potential proposals to be voted upon. Equality, that regardless of the tenure, the team performance, relationships are a big one. Hey, I'm your best buddy, commish. You need to do this for me, so on and so on.
We all get those.
Every GM every GM in a league is an equal partner in the league, and the commissioner can't allow those relationships to in any way impact their decision making. But in comments, questions, concerns voiced by any GM should always be provided the same level of attention and consideration as any other. And I also must ensure that the commissioner should always ensure that their opinions or their takes never take precedence over the opinions of the other GMs, regardless whether the commissioner is in the league or not. Again, you're there as a leader, you're there as a facilitator, but this league belongs to the GMs and everyone has an equal say. Then there's responsibility. To be successful, the commissioner must always maintain responsibility over all facets of the league. They have the responsibility to ensure all aspects of the league are running smoothly and adherence to the rules. They have to be available to the league GMs at all reasonable times. Yeah, don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I did have a GM who would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning because he worked at a bar and that's when he got out. And hey, I need to talk. But again, reasonable times and arrange for alternative methods in the event of absence. Hey, a commissioner may be absent at times. You have to make sure that your GMs understand where you are and how to get a hold of you or what they need to do in your absence.
And that also probably includes like the actual method for communicating in the league, right? Like that's part of it too, I think, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether you're going to use
calling or texting or what,
yeah, it's going to be league chat, DM, if it's going to be another platform, if it's going to be a text, call, etc. You have to also make sure that, you're responsible for the preseason meetings, the collection of fees, disbursement of awards, all in a timely manner and making certain that's documented. So the commissioner has to be responsible to document an accounting of all league funds and affairs. And finally, as far as responsibility, the commissioner should be responsible for encouraging responsibility from others in the league and holding them accountable when they are routinely not conducting themselves responsibly. So again, you have a responsibility as a commissioner, but you also have a responsibility to the other league GMs to ensure everyone's following the rules and they're not taking advantage of the league.
Real quick, Jesse in the chat, this maybe goes to the fairness point. He says, how do you determine league changes? Majority, supermajority, all or nothing? How do you tend to do it? I know the way I do it in most of my leagues, but I wanted to hear from you first.
So we used to do majority of all the league members, but that became problematic when certain members may not participate in a league vote or they may drop out. We have different methods that you can vote in the spring meeting for the proposals. And typically what we do now is it's a majority of all those voting. And what that does is it's supposed to be a deterrent for those to miss the vote. It's like, hey, if you're not there, you're not even going to be counted. You're not going to be counted as a no vote. You're not going to be counted at all. And so we try to encourage people to participate in the votes. Anything that happens once the spring meeting is completed and we begin the season, which I'm basically saying is May. After that, it takes a unanimous vote of everybody voting to change a rule after the spring meeting. Again, this is to encourage people to have those conversations during the winter meeting. We do winter meetings usually late February, early March, and then we do we conduct our spring meetings right around draft time, right around the NFL draft. And so everybody has an opportunity to go through and talk about those. But that's what we do.
In my leagues, it's generally similar. I said usually I'm able to get everyone to vote, and we actually do. I guess it would be sort of super majority. The majority of all my leagues, they're almost all 12. I think there might be 114 in there, and we generally require 2/3 majority for it to go through. So like 8 of 12 have to approve it. Even if it's a majority that's 7-5 or something like that, the rule doesn't pass, and everyone knows that going in. And we basically do in pretty much all my leagues. We basically I throw out there usually in February after MFL rolls over because all my leagues are on MFL.
That helps.
We kind of I throw it out there. Do you want to? If anybody has any rule changes, post them here, and then by March we usually vote on it, and then that's how it ends up going. And I just hound people enough that if there's one or two stragglers, I make sure we get all 12 votes. So.
Well, see, that's great. And I try to get everybody there. Sometimes it can be very difficult. There are those even in Dynasty leagues who do not believe they follow my wife's lead and believe there's no football in March, but the league never ends when you're in a dynasty league. And at least for those who are I mean, maybe this is not fair, but for those who are serious in dynasty, it's a year-round endeavor. And at least that's the way I treat it. But I like what you said, regardless of whether or not it's majority or supermajority or unanimous, those are all things that, going back to the rules, those are all things that need to be explicit in the rules so that at least everybody in the league knows where they stand. Like my set, hey, if you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. And so I think those are the kinds of things that just, when you're talking about complex rules or comprehensive rules, those are the types of things I think need to be in there.
I think I kind of cut you off as you were about to go into engagement. So I'll let you pick it back up.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Engagement leagues, especially dynasty leagues, require a commissioner who remains engaged with the GMs during all phases of the league calendar. Right? We just talked about that. I'm constantly bugging them year round. Some of them love it. Others
have
don't.
to. Yeah.
Yep. I do. And those with whom I play fantasy are in leagues because there was routine discussion about the league, about NFL games and players, about other unrelated topics. There's banter and trash talk and more. They like that. That's why they're in these leagues, because they've, just like all of us, have been in leagues where, have you ever been in that league where there's just nothing discussed? I mean, scroll back and the last message posted was a month prior. Those aren't fun. I'm in it, as I'll say in a few moments, I'm in it for the camaraderie. I'm in it for the fellowship and the discussion of football. And the same reason we're all here right now is to talk fantasy, is to talk football. And so I like a league where there's a lot of discussion. It can be about anything. I don't care if we talk about beer, as long as there's some sort of discussion. And I can talk about beer all day.
Jeff, we love talking about beer. We had a great time talking about beer. I'm always a fan of that. Yeah.
Yep. So, but a commissioner should strive to facilitate these conversations. So when something isn't happening, or it seems like things are getting a little quiet, that's when I kind of start throwing out comments or polls or anything just to try to facilitate a conversation or to get somebody to start talking. And most of the time that can work. Sometimes it falls on deaf ears, but to me, a commissioner needs to always be trying to facilitate that. But it's not just that, it's also being engaged with the GMs, whether it's collectively or one-on-one, to gauge their perspective on the league. I often will reach out and DM people if they don't live close by or I don't talk to them regularly. I will reach out to them. Hey, how's it going? What do you think? Because I want to know this stuff, because I take notes. I throw them in a folder on Google Drive, and they're there for me to look at in the off season, so that I kind of can get an idea of, hey, what should we talk about in the off season? So that's something I do all the time with all my GMs. And I found that this attention is appreciated by the GMs, because they know that the commissioner, they know that I want to know what they are feeling. They know that I will listen to them, and then I'm going to provide them equal treatment. So that I found has been very effective in keeping people engaged.
So actually, let me put a question to you here then. So this referees template, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, this idea, is this something you came up with on your own, or is this something you came up with in tandem with your league, like the leagues that you're running?
No, I came up with it on my own. It's something I created a couple of years back, and I think it was during COVID, and I was trying to figure out ways to keep people excited about the leagues. And of course, that was a time when everybody was talking online, because you didn't have anything else to do. But I was just thinking about it, and I had a conversation. I did have a conversation with one of my friends, and we were talking about what makes our league successful. And so some of these things started coming to my mind, and as the words started coming to my mind, I just started realizing, hey, I've got something here, so let's move these letters. Hey, I got referees. I don't know how I did it, but there it is.
Look, and it's perfect. Like that's exactly what you're doing. You're being the referee for the league. I mean, it's well done.
It is, and so I appreciate that. Thank you. It's something, like I said, I'll call it. I didn't set out to do it. It was a complete accident, but it all kind of fit like pieces in a puzzle. So.
But yes, go
And
on to
then-
enthusiasm. Go ahead. We're getting
okay,
there.
so then, commissioners should demonstrate a level of enthusiasm for all stages of the league calendar. Again, off season, you got to be enthusiastic. You have to encourage people to be enthusiastic. I don't know if all my league mates would call me enthusiastic or just a pest, but
or crazy. Yeah.
Or
I
crazy.
get called crazy a lot. Yeah.
Well, that's my wife. My wife will call me crazy.
Yeah. That's same. Yeah.
Every time I add a league, she just stares at me. But moving on, I won't.
Don't tell her.
We won't do that. She's going to end up watching this, so she's going to hear it anyway.
Oh, great. He's awesome. He's great. Your wife is awesome. And Jeff's great too.
Thanks, Michelle. All right. But this enthusiasm, it can be verbal or it can be written, but it can also be illustrated by like attention to detail, preparing PowerPoint presentations for winter and spring meetings, providing league abstracts and registers. These are all things that I put into my league. So every year, April 1, I publish for every single league what's called a league abstract. It's about a 100-page document, which contains everything from my letter addressing the league to the league rules as they've been amended, schedules, proposals, and then a slew of statistics that I put together. Old school. I don't have all the API powers that everybody else has. I just kind of do it old school, but I get it together. And these things, what it does is, again, they may think I'm crazy, but it shows that that rubs off, because when they see that I'm enthusiastic about it and putting this work into this, they want to be a part of it. And so I think, I don't write the league rules. I've said this before. I don't write their league rules because I expect anybody to read them. That's not the purpose of league rules.
Right.
The purpose of league rules is the guide for the commissioner so that he's consistent in what he does. And you can always look at a league GM and say, nope, it's in the rules. And if you didn't read it, I'm sorry, but there it is. Yep. And so, but putting all this work into it, I think, is really important. And, I also think enthusiasm can be generated via unique rules that keep the GMs engaged, even when they're out of playoff contention. So, we talked, one of your questions coming up, I know that we're talking about league rules and and stuff like that. And I think there's ways you can keep people enthusiastic and engaged in the league, even after they've had a horrendous season and they're out of playoff contention. So I think that's very important.
Well, that was actually, we can pivot right into that question. Like what do you do to keep people enthusiastic? That's definitely something I wanted to ask you.
Well, I think one of the things that we do is, I've got sorts of different rules in each league. I try to keep each league different. So each of my dynasty leagues has a twist on rules. I don't want to mirror leagues. That doesn't really do it for me. So each and every league is different. I got an IDP league. I have a Debbie league. I have one dynasty league that has where it's actually a semi-dynasty. You actually have to slim your roster and then you unprotect players. And we have a claim period, which we're just getting ready to enter into Saturday. So, I mean, there's all sorts of leagues that we have different rules. But one of the things that I do is try to find the unique off-platform side pot rules that have encouraged GM participation.
Ooh.
Everybody's heard about different side pots. So I have everything from highest losing score. I have a bad beat. I have skins. I have different things like that. And in one league a few years back, we had a 2-win team that took down the progressive bad beat jackpot for $180. And this person, and it's a smaller money league, and this person was going to be out, and I think ended up netting $70 on the league or whatever it was. And that's a team that probably would have given up and not even bothered with their, you would have had to really chase them to make sure that they were managing their starting lineup. But he kept at it. And the last week of the year, boom. And so I think it's one of these things where I try to find ways to always encourage, people to remain. And I've heard a lot of different ideas over the last year on how to keep people engaged in the league through the last week of the season, everything from additional picks to different draft style things or and stuff like that. And those are all great ideas. I've just found thus far that some of these side pots just keep people interested in. And so we've got that in a few of my leagues.
Okay. That's good to hear. No, I like the idea of like a bad beat, because then, even if you lose there, you might still get some money, and money always tends to make losing better. It's a weird thing, but
Well, and skins is just like you think it is. The first week, you establish the base. The next week, if you beat that score, you win. If not, it carries over. Most of my skins at the last week of the season, It's just highest score gets half of what's remaining, and the remaining half rolls over into the next season. With bad beat, it's the second highest score loses that week. So you have to be beaten by the first highest score. That one can tend to carry over, and I think right now that pot's up to about $330 to start.
Man, I dig that. We might have to talk about that offline. I kind of want to get something like that going in my league. I think that'd be a really good idea. But we're getting close. We're getting close. So finish us off with stability here. I know that's the last one in referees.
Okay. And then stability is, to me, stability is what comes from
all of this.
Yes, being successful in all the other areas. And the greatest feeling for a commissioner and a league is stability. So the first 7 values, if they're applied and achieved, stability is very likely. With consistent rules and enforcement, fair and equal standing for each and every GM, a commissioner who takes the responsibility seriously, enthusiastic engagement by all involved, including the commissioner, a stable league is going to occur. And it usually is going to result in GMs that are going to return year after year. Disputes are mitigated. We just don't have that many disputes, and chaos rarely ensues. So I think just following this and by living by this, I have leagues where people stay, they play, and some of them I have GMs that are in, I have a couple GMs that are in all my leagues. So I mean, it's
very nice.
And they stay there. So it's you have people. Again, they like the stability. They like seeing this is what they want because they've been through all those we've all been through those leagues. When you have something that is stable and consistent and structured, they love it. And but the biggest thing as a commissioner, my last thing is, I always say that I'm yours in service because I'm there to serve the league. It's not the other way around. This isn't my league. It's their league.
I like that. I like that entire yours in service line too. I think that's a really good way to wrap up that idea because you're exactly right. Commissioners are very much thought of as a thankless job, right? I know that there's a few leagues that I've heard of where there's like a commissioner payment, and I don't like that. I don't think that's the way it should be. You shouldn't be commissioning leagues for money. I just don't. That gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'm not a fan of that. It should be done for fun, and it should be done because you want to do it, as opposed to you're getting rewarded for it. But I think all of these are terrific ideas, and anybody out there who's a commissioner of a league should definitely take note of at least 1 or 2 of these and do something different in your league that ups the engagement somehow, or helps make it more stable, like whatever it is. Like I think that's just a really smart idea. So that's kind of why I wanted to have you on to talk about that in more detail. Because I said to you, I think even when we were hanging out, I'm like, no, save it for the podcast. Save it for the podcast. Like I want to hear about it all in a row, and then we can kind of get in the weeds on it. I think this was great. But Rocky, do you have any questions before we get into a couple low-hanging fruit commissioner questions, I guess?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I wasn't talking much during all that. I was really just I really enjoyed listening to all laid out the way it was. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. As someone who commissions, has commissioned 8-9 leagues at a time. I think a lot of stuff that I, just in the course of doing that, have been doing a lot of those things. But I mean, I really liked hearing it laid out, especially for anybody who's thinking of commissioning a league. I think it's a great kind of guideline to how you should be doing that. And like you said, maybe you don't do everything that Jeff said, like some of the side pots or something like that. But just as a general rule, I think those are like all great values to bring to commission.
It's something to aspire to. And I like Jeff as your kind of as a guideline of something to look to, right? It's one of those things you can put up like a poster on your wall and just be like, am I taking care? Like, am I doing this the right way? Am I being fair about this? Am I treating everybody equally? Like it's kind of a nice little reminder, put it on your monitor or something, like on a Post-it note. If you're managing a bunch of leagues, it can be really helpful just to kind of keep in mind all of these things. You don't have to go quite as hardcore as Jeff has, but if you want to, you can. But I think it's just a really good reminder for all of us that commission things. Like there's a lot of moving parts to being a commissioner, and sometimes you might have one, but not the other. Rules are pointless without enforcement, like you said. So I really like the way you laid that out, Jeff. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about it.
Oh, no, my pleasure. And then, so there are some other questions I put on the sheet. I'm just going to ask a couple of these, but there are some that I know that we already got to even, but I want to ask you specifically. You kind of mentioned this before, but do you like playing in leagues that you also are the commissioner of, or would you rather just be a commissioner or just be a player? Like, do you have a preference, I guess?
No, I play in every league that I commission. I'm not opposed to being a commissioner for a league that I'm not a GM, but again, I play fantasy football because I love the camaraderie and the fellowship. I'm not doing it to win championships or money, because if that was my goal, I would have quit a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I'm here. I do this because I just love the environment. It's the same thing with, meeting everybody in Scott Fishbowl we talked about. I just great people talking fantasy and talking football, and I just love the camaraderie.
No, I love it.
I agree with Jeff, and just kind of adding to that, I think the commissioner's engagement and enthusiasm isn't nearly going to be as much if they are not in the league. Like, you're just
100%.
there's a greater connection to it being in the league than if it's almost like a job. If you're not in the league, it's just something you have, even if you're not getting paid for it and you're doing it because it's a friend's league or something like that. It's more of an obligation than something you're probably passionate about with that particular league. So yeah, I think I same thing. I'm in all the leagues that I commission. So I don't think I'd be that interested in commissioning a league that I wasn't in. It just wouldn't be as fun for me.
No, I'm with you. And I'm on the same page. I think being in the league and being one of the managers and kind of having a voice as to how the league goes and having it affect the outcome of the league is very important to being a good commissioner, because you have to have some skin in the game almost, right? Like, it just helps you make more fair decisions, I think, too. Like, putting yourself in the shoes of a manager is different than actually being a manager, right? Like, I'm in this league. Like, how would I want it run? I think too, like I mentioned before, I like co-commissioning because it gives you a little bit of like a good cop, bad cop idea. If you need to, you can have somebody who, like, for instance, Commissioner A reaches out about payments and isn't getting any luck. Well, Commissioner B can step in and try. Like, it kind of takes some of that pressure off, which I know payments are kind of the least favorite thing about being a commissioner. But also, not that you have to have payments. You can definitely run free leagues. But I think sometimes too, it can be nice to have somebody who's maybe, again, real life gets in the way, right? Where you've got some things going on and you're like, I really can't give it the enthusiasm I need to, but my other commissioners, ready and willing to go in there and jump in and talk about things. And I can kind of take a step back. So that's kind of why I like doing it. But I will say this, like, I don't think I would ever commission a league that I'm not in. I just don't see myself doing that. It just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I kind of figured that would be your answer, but I just wanted to ask just to make sure. And then the only other one that I was really wanting to ask was, are there any fun commissioner stories you want to share? As someone who's commissioned a bunch of leagues and been in a bunch of leagues for a bunch of years, I don't want to hear like 45 minutes of stories, but like, what would be like your top one or two that you feel like would be kind of interesting? And you can drop names if you want, but I don't think you need to. And just kind of curious what you've seen.
Well, I don't know how funny this is or how fun it is or whatever, but so they say you should never drink and draft. Well, you should never commission consume.
Oh boy.
And definitely don't do them both together. So I was in a keeper league that starts one QB, and I had already kept Deshaun Watson in like a much later round. I can't remember what it was. And I had two first round picks, and I had started my in drinking a lot sooner than I should have. And in my inebriated state, I then drafted QBs with both my first round picks.
Is it a one QB league or a super flex?
It's a one QB league.
Oh my
God. 3 QBs. And so not only would I never draft a QB in the first round anyway, but now I had 3. And of course, my league mates were relentless. I mean, they just would not stop. And so one of my friends, and it wasn't out of anger, it was more out of just because we're idiots. I went to throw a PS4 controller at my friend's arm. He was sitting on the sofa in front of me. And I threw it so hard, it bounced off the arm of the sofa he was sitting on, came back and smacked me right in the forehead and eye. And I got a black eye from it, from a PS4 controller. That was the worst commissioning of my life.
That sounds like a great league, man.
And I think I even fell asleep before the last pick.
Don't commission and consume. I like that.
No.
That's good advice. That's good advice. Rocky, do you have any fun commissioner stories you want to share on the show today or no?
I'm not sure if I have any fun ones. No. I'm trying to think. I mean, nothing's coming to mind. I did see this one thing, and I was trying to think of something. There's nothing like Jeff's story about getting hit.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
I mean, most of what I can think of are just some sort of like bad or annoying stories. So,
well, and I think it's different, like depending on how you define fun, right? Is it fun because it ended well and it wasn't that big of a deal? Is it fun because I had a good time, but I don't remember what I was doing? Like, there's so many ways you can list having fun. And I think too, I've been in a bunch of leagues, as we were talking about before, like I'm in a bunch of different redraft and all these different kinds. And I deal with a lot of different commissioners, but I still think my home league commissioner, the redraft or keeper league that I've been in for 20 years now, I want to say, Shout out to Adam Holleran. He's the commissioner of that league. He's in my home dynasty league that I co-commission, but he does a great job commissioning every year, always trying to keep the league engaged and very enthusiastic. Does a lot of the scoring and the statting and all that. So I loved hearing you talk about that too, Jeff. And that's something I probably need to get better at my own, is like making it more interesting and stat wise for those players in the league. That is a lot of fun. So I just want to say, like, that's something I want to make, is I want to make fun commissioner stories. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go out there and have a good time commissioning leagues, because ultimately we're all in this for fun. We're all in this for camaraderie. Like you said, Jeff, we're all in it to hang out. And if it's not fun, people are going to leave the league, and that causes instability. So, I mean, it's just, that's the best compliment you can have as a commissioner, when nobody wants to leave, and where you have a waiting list or something. That's always a good time. So no, that's a good point.
And one other thing I wanted to say before we finish off the commission stuff is, one of the questions you had skipped over was some of your favorite things about being a commissioner. For me, it's something Jeff touched on earlier. Is I like, it gives me a chance to make different leagues. That's the whole reason I have as many leagues as I do. Every single one of them is different. Like I decided to do an off, before I kind of got more popularized by Ryan McDowell. I decided to make an all flex league. I think I forget what he calls it, Ultra Flex or something like that. Like 5 years ago. And then I have one that's really out there with like, it's super flex, but you also have to start 3 running backs and 4 wide receivers and 2.0 tight end premium, because I wanted to just try some wacky stuff. And like every league is different in some way. One is Devi and also 2 tight end. So yeah, it was just like all different things basically. That to me is kind of the most fun, is coming up with different ideas for leagues, and that's why like of the 8 I commission, like all of them have like a different set of rules.
I love that. And for anybody who's listening who's not a commissioner, right? I mean, we all have commissioners, right? Everybody who's in a league should have some sort of a commissioner of their league. But I think to Rocky's point, if you're not a commissioner, go think about starting one. I mean, you can start a dynasty league anytime you want. It doesn't have to be for this season. I know, wasn't it Trade Addicts 11 that started like a year ahead, where there
10,
wasn't scoring? 10, where there wasn't scoring right away. Like, I thought that
in
was
September, and started the following September.
I thought that was really unique, whereas like you have a whole year of off season, so to speak. Like, I just think that's a really neat idea. So if you're not a commissioner at all and you're listening to this, maybe there's some interest, and maybe you've got that idea in the back of your head, like, man, why hasn't anyone ever done a league like this? Or I think I could do a better job than Rocky commissioning this league. Well, hey, go prove it, right? But at the same time, send notes on Twitter, tag us on everything. We'll be out there sharing your leagues and trying to get it filled up and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's all for fun, guys. Just go out and have as much fun as you can. That's really where I want to land this plane, and just say, thank you to all the commissioners out there. It's a very thankless job. I do think there is a lot of hard work, and it doesn't get said enough. Thank you for being commissioners. All of us, but also all of everyone else. There's 1 out of every 12 players in theory, right? So with that, we're going to move on to what I'm going to, tentatively call the Jesse Shot portion of the show. Jesse is in DJ2 with us, Dynasty Junkies 2. He had a couple of trades that we missed a couple of weeks ago. He did some outhouse challenges that I don't think we covered enough. So I wanted to make sure I got that. And since we're doing a Jesse Shot Dynasty Outhouse Challenge trades, I'm like, we might as well do a Jesse Shot Find Me a trade, which is what we're going to get into later. And it just so happens that I was able to make a trade with him to make an active trade in DJ2 as well. So this is just a bunch of fun for Jesse Shot if you're listening. We'll start with the first Outhouse Challenge trade. These were both done on June 11th, or that's when they were officially processed. And I think too, this is one of those things where, you put the trade comes in and you put it on Twitter, and then whichever side wins, if it's the other side, you accept it, right? In case those people listening are not familiar with the Dynasty Outhouse Challenge. I really like doing those in casual leagues, in like stale or kind of quiet leagues, to your point, Jeff, where things aren't happening very much. Like, just put a message in the message board, like, hey, say, for the next 24 hours, every trade that you send me, I'll put on Twitter, and the winning side is what I will have on my team. And so then you can get people trying to exploit that or find loopholes, or, capitalize on something. They know you like a player, but the market doesn't. It's kind of fun and can cause some chaos. You have to have a strong heart to do it, though, because sometimes, man, I've had some trades where I'm like, I do not like this trade, but I said I'd do it, and it's just kind of for chaos. But so he was actually able to get 2 of these trades pulled off. We'll do these one at a time. The first one, where he gave up Ezekiel Elliott and CeeDee Lamb, 2 Dallas players, and CeeDee Lamb is the best player in the trade, and he got back 2 25 firsts and TJ Hawkinson. Now, this is a 14 team Superflex tight end premium. And Dynasty Junkies 2 is what all these are in. So, Rocky, I'll go to you first. CeeDee Lamb and Zeke, or 225 firsts and TJ Hawkinson?
I kind of agreed with Twitter on this one. I think the value is on the Hawkinson and the 25 first side. I mean, I don't remember where these firsts land. Theoretically projected.
Yeah,
Obviously
we don't really know. We're thinking a middle probably for these,
And the middle, I think that's kind of what you have to assume. And yeah, 2 mid first and TJ Hawkinson and 2.0 tight end premium league, especially 14 teams.
14 team. Yep.
We know we don't do training camp reports, but the reports are coming out good on Hawkinson right now that they think he's ahead of schedule. And even if he's not there to start the beginning of this year, he's still going to be good for quite a long time, I think. I mean, the way guys recover from these kind of injuries nowadays, I don't expect it to affect his career in the long term. So he might miss the first 4, 6, 8 weeks, but I think you're going to see TJ Hawkinson being back to TJ Hawkinson. And 225 first is a lot. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is great, but that is a lot of it. I mean, you could argue at least at full strength, especially that a Hawkinson in a 2.0 tight end premium is probably worth 2 firsts themselves. That's like 4 firsts.
Yeah. Well, there are people that have CeeDee Lamb as like the 101 overall outside of quarterbacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and I get that too.
Really
but there's also guys that have been like, rated super high. Not everyone is Jefferson and Chase and stays at the top for year after. And we expect CD too, but I'm sure we expected a lot of those other guys in the past to stay up there as well. Like, I remember Juju Smith-Schuster was like the wide receiver 2 at one point, and that didn't last very long. So because of youth and one really good season. And but yeah, I mean, I love CeeDee Lamb. I'm not trying to talk down I just think it's a lot of value, and I think
I agree.
The tight end position in that kind of league, especially with 14 teams in the premium, it has a lot of value. Plus, you're getting 2 firsts. You could probably with those 2 firsts, you're not going to get a CeeDee Lamb, but you could probably get a pretty high-end receiver for those 2 firsts.
Or you could trade him for something else, right? You could package them together and go get Jefferson at this point. I mean, you got 3 of them if you got your own. And then just to recap too on this one, this was one that was sent to Jesse, put it on Twitter, and the Hawkinson in 2 firsts won 60-40 pretty much. So 60% of the people voting picked the Hawkinson in 2 firsts. So he went ahead and sent CeeDee Lamb for those picks. And TJ, what do you think about this, though, Jeff? Does that seem like a good value for CD? I mean, I agree with Rocky. I think it's killer value.
Oh, I'm taking this all day long. First of all, Ezekiel, forget him.
Right?
I didn't even factor
part of this deal.
I mentioned it just because it's funny he's still around. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that it's such a major tight end premium, and the fact that you have these 2 tight ends. One, first of all, CeeDee Lamb, we don't even know what's going to happen next year with Dak Prescott. We don't know what's going to happen for the quarterback situation. CeeDee Lamb could find himself in an entirely different situation. It doesn't mean CeeDee won't be CeeDee, but he may not be the CeeDee we've known over the last couple of years. So again, there's a little bit of uncertainty there that might devalue that. But when you're just looking CeeDee Lamb for Hawkinson in a major tight end premium, plus those 2 first-round picks, you don't have to worry about, like I said, Elliott doesn't even matter because, I think 2025 is supposed to be a pretty RB heavy draft. So I think, you're going to be able to get definitely a much better running back out of the draft if that's the way you decide to go with one of those picks. And then, like you said, there's always going to be a stud receiver that's ready to go with one of those picks. So I think, and the thing is, if there's somebody who really stands out above everybody else, you can, like you said, package those 2 first rounds, move up higher in the draft and grab the one can't miss player. Or I'm going with this all day.
Yeah, no, and I'm right there with you. In all honesty, too, I remember voting on this poll, and I thought I voted on this poll, and I remember seeing the poll, but I did not vote on it, which I thought was interesting. I must have missed it. I know he posted it, but I was like, I don't want to taint it. And also, it's so obviously the Hawkinson side. I didn't need to. I was like, that better win. And so it was interesting to see the results come through. Hawkinson won. I was actually kind of curious if this trade could get done with just one of the firsts. And kind of just talking about that as a value kind of an idea. Like, Rocky, would you do this for just, let's remove Zeke because it doesn't really matter, but let's say it was a mid 25 first and Hawkinson alone for CeeDee Lamb. Is that enough for you?
As the CD manager, I would probably try and get a little more. I wouldn't expect another first. But just because I feel like Hawkinson's value, it has been down a little this offseason. I mean, I'm sort of my personal, like the market value. My personal value is I still view him pretty highly, but I think I view him higher than the market does. So I think I should be getting a slightly more than Hawkinson and a mid 25 first. Would I accept it? I'd probably try and get at least a small piece added in.
I think that the first makes it a slam dunk.
Yes.
The extra first or whatever, like one first wouldn't have been enough for me. I agree. If this was a first, a second, and TJ, I'd probably consider it. But it's especially 14 teamer. That second's going to be a little lower valued, even if it's mid, right? Like, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. But the two first that I think are just always going to be first have extra value, and it makes the trade worth doing. DTC agrees. Actually, has the TJ Hawkinson and pick side up by about 3 points overall, so a little less than 10%. But again, that's pretty solid for a trade. So we'll go to the next one here. This one was what I would say is much smaller for obvious reasons, but it's Bo Nix for Jordan Addison. Now, remember, 14-team Superflex. This was after the draft, so the rookie drafts were all done. And this one, the Jordan Addison side won 62-38. So Bing Pot, who is the Jesse Shot team, he gave up Bo Nix and got Jordan Addison in return. Jeff, I'll go to you first. Which of these two would you rather have in a 14-team Superflex?
I mean, I'd have to know what my quarterbacks are, but if I already have two decent quarterbacks, I would definitely take Jordan Addison as long as we can, keep the keys out of his hands. And then,
yeah.
But I definitely think the Addison's the move here.
What about you, Rocky?
I agree that it's Addison. I don't think it's as lopsided as the poll might suggest. It's like 62-38.
62-38.
And I'm not even Addison, a Bo Nix guy, but just what looks like is going to be a starting quarterback in a 14-team Superflex. I think it should be a little closer, but then again, I'm also going to take the Addison side. So
yeah.
And maybe it is closer for a lot of those people who actually clicked on Addison, but you have to pick one or the other. So I just think there is some question about Addison. I mean, he's got a new quarterback now. We don't know how good JJ McCarthy's going to be. He's got plenty of competition there between Jefferson and when Hawkinson is healthy. I think he's a great talent, but it is just one season. But Bo Nix, we know nothing about, and I'm not super high on him either. So it's basically just he seems almost certain to start this year is his biggest value to me. But I would still take Addison over him.
Yeah, and mine was, if I was, and again, I don't think I voted on this poll either, but I probably would have voted Bo Nix just because quarterbacks in 14-team Superflex are so hard to find that I think it's worth the extra consideration on that side. Just I think it leans Bo Nix for me. I don't hate this trade. I don't hate giving up Bo Nix for Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? It's not like I would cry myself to sleep with this, but it's like, oh man, quarterbacks are hard to come by in 14-team Superflex. And even if Bo Nix isn't that great, his value is going to be pretty good until it's not. And I think maybe you could pivot off of him as we get some of these blurbs that come out. Again, this trade was before the Jordan Addison DUI or driving while intoxicated. I don't know what exactly we're doing there, but he was parked and there was some question marks. I was talking with Drew Davenport actually about that last weekend. So it's one of those things where I like the quarterback, but I don't hate the value, and I kind of understand the logic of why you would be willing to send it. Because I do think Jordan Addison is the real deal. And I think he's going to be a great player for probably years to come as a wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 3 in kind of a worst case scenario. And that ain't bad either in a 14-teamer. So I think that's a pretty fair trade.
Something you just said there is the key for me. Jordan Addison, I agree. I think is the real deal. And I think Bo Nix is not. So I agree that there's an inherent value in quarterback, but when I think one guy is for real and one guy is not, it makes it easier for me to take the guy that I think is for real, even if the position is more valuable.
I'm also the kind of person that trades to trade. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that trades like I'm just trading to trade. I trade with the mindset of where can I add value? And then I would take that Bo Nix and trade it to someone else. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my thought. Like, can you get more than Jordan Addison for Bo Nix? Maybe. Right? It might be worth shopping that around. Obviously, that's not what happens in these outhouse challenges. It's an offer that comes to you, you got to accept. But I think part of it is, I think there's some value in Bo Nix that we're not quite capitalizing on yet. And I don't agree that he should be that valued, right? That's kind of to your point, Rocky. I'm with you. I think he's kind of more of a mirage than Jordan Addison is. Jordan Addison is the 1 in the hand and Bo Nix is the 2 in the bush. Well, we don't know how big those in the bush are going to be. We don't know if they're going to fly away. Like, I just give me the 1 in the hand, So just to hammer that analogy home. But my point is, like, I'm not saying you have to hold Bo Nix for his career. Like, that's not how these trades work, right? I'm just trying to add a little value and then see if I can go get somebody a little better. Like, could I get T. Higgins for Bo Nix? Like someone who's got some question marks. Could I go get a Jalen Waddle for Bo Nix in a piece? Or, that's probably where I'd try to see what other options there were. I'd aim higher than Addison. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, on to the quote unquote real trade that was made this week between Jesse and myself. I have it on the show sheets. You guys already know which side is which. So I'm just going to say it, and then I'll just let you guys tell me what you think of it. Again, 14 teams, super flex, tight end premium. Jesse gave up Chris Godwin and Pat Freiermuth for a 26 first from myself, my own 26 first, Romeo Doubs and Irv Smith at Kansas City tight end, technically at this point. Jeff, I'll go to you first on this one. Which of these two sides appeals to you more?
This is close.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know what to expect from Pat Freiermuth. I know, with Russell Wilson there, I mean, they've talked about, I'm sorry, Arthur Smith just scares me. And
yeah.
I just don't know what's going to happen, but I think Pat Freiermuth may be decent, but I think Irv Smith is going to get his opportunities, especially, but I think is he third in line in KC?
So I think so. I think Eric Gray is still ahead of him.
Yeah, I think so.
And Irv Smith is kind of almost nothing, but he's a player. He's a rosterable player. I don't know.
So you're giving up a, Big Pot's giving up a starting tight end for a, second or third string tight end in a premium league. Dobbs, again, who knows what's going to happen in the Green Bay carousel. My problem with Green Bay, as many have stated, is that who really knows who's going to get the targets? There's so many mouths to feed there. Is Dobbs, where is he on the pecking order? They're talking about trying to ensure they get both tight ends in there. I mean, he could end up, fourth or fifth on the pecking order. And so I don't know what kind of, so it comes down to Chris Godwin. For me, it comes down to Chris Godwin for a 2026 round one. And if you're not looking to win now, I'm good with that. So
my logic, well, I'll get into that. Rocky, what are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with where Jeff came to at the end there. I looked at this when it came in, and I've been looking at it for a while now, and it's just a weird kind of trade to me because I don't love any of the pieces in it, including even the 26 first, because I don't. I
love when that happens.
Years out.
Yeah.
But I don't. There's pieces I don't hate either. I mean, it's not like I hate everybody in this trade, but I think I'm with Jeff. I think I lean the 26 first, and you got Dobbs is a bit of a flyer at this point. I mean, you got Reed there, you got Watson still, who could still be a thing, or at least be involved enough to mess up, Dobbs targets and things like that. So. Even though they kind of play different roles, but Irv Smith doesn't really factor into it for me. But I just feel like the first is the one piece that is stable. I mean, Godwin's kind of a fine-ish wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 2 at this point. So getting a first for him, and like you said, I don't have much faith in Freiermuth going forward. So getting a first of any kind out of there, I think is probably decent work. Especially, I think he gave up in the outhouse stuff. Yeah, he gave up CD and got Hawkinson the 25 first.
Yep.
So I think that's not that you couldn't rebuild with CD, but that kind of is pushing him. Getting those extra picks is probably pushing him a little more. Getting a young guy. I mean, Bo Nix is also young, but getting Jordan Addison, I think, kind of puts him in a more of a rebuild mode anyway. So I think it kind of makes sense to go for the first. And I think every other piece in this trade is just going to decline in value just every day going forward. So
yeah.
So here, Jesse's in the chat. When I'm not sure, I think I'll lean on the value of the 26 first.
Yeah, so Jesse's in the chat, and after he made those trades, and I remember thinking I wanted to send him a couple of offers, and life just got ahead of me or away from me. So eventually, I came back to it, and I was looking for a tight end. I was like, my starting tight end was Tyler Higbee. I think I'm like, it's not pretty. You know what I mean? Like, I need something. and I saw him get Hawkinson and the picks, and I was like, maybe there's some rebuild turn here because Hawkinson, like you said, we don't really know what his season's going to be like. So I decided I really like Freiermuth. I think I'm buying into the upside there. I think Godwin has another year. For the sake of the league or the sake of the conversation, we like to talk in vacuums, but I did win the league last year, so I'm kind of in win now mode. And I felt like, that 26 first, Lord willing is late in a 14 teamer, which is kind of like a second, like it's maybe the 13th or 12th, that's not terrible. And I think Freiermuth helps me a lot to win this year. I think Godwin helps me a lot to win this year. I'm not really going to miss Romeo or Irv. So for me, it was kind of like it's a win now trade versus a rebuild trade. And that to me is the exact kind of trade you should be looking where it's kind of even and both teams have context that swings it their way, right? That was kind of my thought. And this is Jesse again here in the chat. He really liked Freiermuth and hated giving him up. I know even during our trade talks and the conversations back and forth, I was like, man, I get it. I like Freiermuth too. I don't want to steal him from you. I'll pay fair price. I felt like this was a fair price. I felt like a 26 first because I didn't have my 25. 26 first is probably about as good as you're going to get, in my opinion, for someone like Freiermuth with all the question marks there. A 2 years out first has a lot of, you have to wait. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then, he says, win this year, then rebuild next year. So that 21st hits high. I wish that was, I'll win again and then have it go low. I don't mind, but if I could somehow win again, that would be great. But point being, this is again, with the context and the added pieces added into the vacuum, it kind of changes things. But I think again, this is why I like the league that we're in. And I like the way that we do these outhouse challenges. It kind of kicks your team in a direction, it kind of makes you decide if you're rebuilding or not. And sometimes that is the whole fun of it. So any other comments on these trades before we get into our Find Me a Trade, also by Jesse?
Nope.
Sounds great. All right. Well, if we're getting into Find Me a Trade, you know what I got to do for that.
Find me a trade.
That's right, Brian Haar. Find Me a Trade. That is the segment where we get to talk about one of our listeners' leagues and talk about their specific team. We care about your team. So again, because it was a Jesse Shot focus show, I figured let's just go all in and do a league that Jesse had submitted. The league is called Tough Wars or Turf Wars. I can remember actually. His name, of course, Bing Pot, which is a terrific Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference, which I'm a huge fan of. So that's the way to do that. It is a 12-team Superflex, 1 PPR with for running back and receiver, and an extra PPR for tight ends. So 1.5 for tight ends. It is a start 9 league with 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex, 1 super flex, and 20 bench. And his comments are, I'm in win now mode, and there is a big competition for who can get to 3 championships in a row. So I really want to do everything I can to make that happen. Was rebuilding for 2 years for this push. Now, I looked at this team, and my first thoughts when looking at his team was, holy smokes, this is a pretty solid team. Like I'm a fan of this team. Rocky, do you want to read off some of the names? We won't pull it up, but do you want to read off some of the players he's got here?
Yeah. So he's got potential starters Herbert, Love, and Tua at quarterback. He's also got kind of like 3 of the more high-end backups in the league in terms of if they get in there or having a chance to start in Sam Darnold, Sam Howell, and Kenny Pickett as well. Running back, he's got Rashad White, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, Vidal from the Chargers that they drafted this year, and then Eric Gray, the Giants backup. Got a bunch of talent at receiver, most of it young. Marvin Harrison Jr., CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle, A.D. Mitchell, Puka Nacua, Marvin Mims, and then basically the only somewhat vets, Mike Evans, Romeo Dobbs, and Deontay Johnson.
So many starters there, though. One heck of a core. I mean, receiver and running back. My goodness. But just wait.
And then he's great at tight end, too. So he's got he's young and good at tight end. Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid are the prime pieces there.
And Pat Freiermuth.
I was going to mention he also has Freiermuth. Right. And then some flyer guys like Greg Dulcich and Isaiah Likely.
Yeah. So again, Jesse, hell of a team, my friend. This one put me a little verklempt. I was like, whoo,
Yeah,
That's a
Jeff,
team right there.
we put our trades on the show sheet and sometimes some comments, and Jeff put on there, I probably wouldn't do anything. And that was my
Yeah.
initial reaction too. But we do trades for the show. So
Yeah, it's for
we
the
figured we'd
content.
come up with something.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that too, and Jeff, I'll let you go first with that kind of segue because it took me a minute to think like, what do you even need? You know what I mean? Like, what would be your biggest need on this team? And there are a couple of, but I mean, your first line on the show sheet says it all. Sometimes the best trades are the ones not made. What else did you think about, and what are your thoughts?
Well, like I said, you rattled it off the names. You had 4 top 15 running backs, 4 top 15 wide receivers, 3 top 15 tight ends, 2 top 15 quarterbacks with Herbert on a low end QB2. How stacked can you be? In fact, can I buy this team off of you?
Yeah.
I mean, how solid of a team. And that's just like, I don't know that I would do anything. So when I was really looking at it, I looked at different positions and I had like 4 different offers. I narrowed it down to 2 and then selected one, ignoring completely the future for win now, which is what, we were talking about. So I started off with a base trade that I would, of course, then negotiate if Anthony Crispino's would do it. But I would offer Marvin Harrison Jr., Pat Freiermuth, and Kamani Valdell for Christian McCaffrey and Adam Thielen. You're getting 2 older guys who are going to allow you, who are going to make you even deeper in those positions in the event of injury. And, you're giving up the future, but you said that's what you were looking to do. You're looking to win now. You may not get them to bite at this first one. You might be able to twist. You might be able to put Jones in there instead of, you might be able to move Jones instead of Vidal. You might be able to put in somebody else than Freiermuth. I can't remember who your other tight end is.
David Njoku. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's things you can do there, but that's what I would try to do. I would try to go for the home run and get McCaffrey and Thielen.
I like that a lot. And I'll be honest too, looking at the Anthony Crispino's team, I did look at that one because of the light tight end. He only has David Njoku and Jatavian Sanders. And then again, it's one of those teams looking at it, like my first pass is there's no way this team's contending. Just, I just don't think it's got enough depth to make it. And it's got Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Garrett Wilson. Like it's got some studs and then it's got a lot of duds. And I think this is the kind of team that I have a couple of these with this kind of build. This is the kind of team that I would be happy to break up Christian McCaffrey and get back some younger guys, one of which is Marvin Harrison Jr., which is no slouch, right? That guy is probably going to maintain some value, and you're getting out before McCaffrey craters. I would highly recommend that is, somebody that team should be shopping. So I really like this trade. Rocky, what are your thoughts on that one?
My initial thought when I saw the trade was that I was wondering, do you even need Freiermuth in there? Not that ADP equals trade value. I did pull up DLF's ADP, and Marvin Harrison and Christian McCaffrey are super close. Marvin Harrison is slightly higher. But I actually think you probably do because I agree. I think that Anthony Crispino's team, and Jesse just commented in the chat, he won last year. But even before he said that, I was thinking that he probably thinks he has enough to compete and may not want to sell off McCaffrey. So I think you would probably have to convince him, and I think that Jesse can afford to do this too. He's loaded at receiver. He's got 2 high-end tight ends, especially if Kincaid kind of gets the target share bump we think he will this year with the lack of solid receivers in Buffalo. So I like this a lot. Like I said, I think it might be a bit of an overpay in terms of pure value, but I think for this team that you're trading him to, you probably need to overpay if you're going to get McCaffrey off.
Smart point. And I think too, knowing that he won last year is partially why I have so many studs and duds teams, because it just makes lineups easier. You know what I mean? Like these are the guys, and then you only have to make decisions on a few. But that being said, again, he probably got there with Tyrod Taylor, Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? Like some of those guys that had value last year that really don't have much this year. Like Antonio Gibson even last year wasn't bad. Alexander Madison last year wasn't bad. James Conner is getting older, right? So it's one of those where when you win, sometimes you want to win again. I get that, obviously, but sometimes you got to look at your roster and go, maybe it's time to think about another angle here. So again, I don't know if that trade goes through as is. Like you said, you might have to add a little bit more, but you might not. right? You might not. Maybe he's looking to get out on McCaffrey. Maybe he's like, I rode him, I got my title, I went out, and Harrison is not nothing. You know what I mean? Like that is a very worthy trade chip, and I really like the idea there. Rocky, what was your trade? We'll get to yours next before we get to mine.
Okay, so yeah, again, I kind of looked at Jesse's team and was like, yeah, he doesn't probably. The real answer is he probably doesn't need to make a trade. So, but when looking at trying to come up with something, I basically was just thinking, like Jeff said, he mentioned he kind of wants to win now, so that was part of it, and also maybe a little bit of kind of consolidation / tearing up, because especially with only a start 9 league, so. He's loaded at wide receiver. He's got 2 rookies here that may be good, but may end up busting. We don't know. So I decided to try and turn them into a little more. And I trade Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and a second. And Jesse has 2. So maybe you can try and throw him whichever one's lower. To Purple Haze for T. Higgins, David Montgomery, and a third. I'm not super high on Monty, but he had a really nice year last year.
Yep.
You are giving up the 2 young receivers, but I mean, AD is like a second round pick value. Xavier Worthy's a late first, and T Higgins. And if you can get this, Higgins is not old. He's
No.
25. He's 25 now. He could be on a new team next year, yes, which could be bad, but could also be really good. He could be the wide receiver 1 in a decent offense next year. We hope he's not like New England's wide receiver 1 or something. That would be bad, but it could get even better. So without having to compete with Chase for targets. So I like turning the 2 unproven young guys into a proven young guy. You add Montgomery as a win now piece who doesn't have a ton of dynasty value. I wasn't sure just the 2 young receivers was enough for both those guys, which is why I added the second, third swap piece to it in the end there.
Yeah.
But that's what I was thinking.
I like that. And then looking at Purple Haze's team, he's rostering Kenny Galladay.
Yeah, that was the other
saw
thing.
that.
His team, I can't
What?
imagine. Unlike the Anthony Crispino's guy, I can't imagine he thinks he's competing with his team. So
Well, he's got Michael Thomas. He's got Trey McKitty. You know what I mean? He's got some of these names. You're like, oh, I remember that guy. So
other
Mike
than his
Davis,
quarterbacks, these 2 are like his own, and Kenneth Walker. He has also. Those are like his only 3 good pieces
Malik
on the
Willis,
entire team.
Like,
after
these
his
are all names
quarterbacks.
that I am like happy to drop. So like, I feel like this guy is probably not paying 100% attention. Keyshawn Vaughn still on the roster. So like, there's a bunch of those guys that are just cannon fodder. Like, just get rid of them. So I really like the idea here of giving that guy, 2 younger players with a lot of upside, and getting rid of Higgins and the question marks there, and Monty and the question marks there. Like, just getting rid of those guys. I think that's a very smart trade. Jeff, what did you think about that one?
I like it a lot. First of all, I don't understand any of the T Higgins, anti-T Higgins stance that people are taking. It doesn't make any sense. Yes, he's still the number 2 wide receiver in the Bengals offense, and if he does move on, it's very likely he's going to be a number 1, and I think you're going to see a lot of great things out of him. So, and like you said, he's still young, so it doesn't make any sense why people are so down on him. But I like this. I mean, okay, call me a homer, but I really like David Montgomery. I still think like you said, long-term dynasty, probably not. But for now, right here and now, I think David Montgomery is still going to be a stud this year. I think they're going to do a lot of the same, what they did with Gibbs and Montgomery. They can talk about trying to feature Gibbs more, but I still think Montgomery is going to get his touches. He's going to get his goal line stands. And I think this is a great trade.
Yeah, and Jesse mentioned in the chat that the other guy's 100% in rebuild, so he's probably be happy to get rid of Montgomery and the pick upgrade. I don't know where he figures T Higgins in his rebuild. I think T Higgins is a guy you could keep. If you're rebuilding, I generally expect to be out of it within 2 years at most. So T Higgins is only 27 at that point. I would also say too, Jesse's not dying for running backs. Monty, I was trying to even out the value. Like I had the 2 receivers for T, which I wasn't sure that was too much, so I threw in Montgomery. But then I wasn't sure it wasn't enough, so then I threw in the picks. But it doesn't hurt, and I feel like maybe then if he wants to, he could afford then to move another running back for something else, or package 2 other players together to tier up somewhere. So having extra pieces wouldn't hurt, and I like giving up those 2. Like I like Xavier Worthy a lot, but he's far from a guarantee to me. I mean, like, Rashee Rice, as long as he, can stay on the field and not be suspended or go to jail or anything.
Yeah.
He showed a lot last year. Marquise Brown is a proven receiver in this league, and I think being with Patrick Mahomes is going to help him a lot. So we could see Xavier Worthy not do much this year. And if he's even good to be, like, we don't even know if he's good for sure on the NFL level.
My only question here is, as loaded as this team is, does T and David even start?
Oh, that's man, and to start 9, that's a great question too, right? Like, but do Worthy and Mitchell start? It's the same
no, they
kind of
don't
question.
either. You're right.
But I feel like Higgins might have a better chance to start, and Montgomery, depending on how that team flies out.
I think maybe you package T and Waddle to get chased or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
you can get up there.
No, I like this for depth. I mean, again, you never, especially at running back, you don't know who's going to go down. I think having the depth at running back is huge. That was more of a joke than anything. I
know. I love it. I love it. Great joke. Also, as a Lions fan, what are your thoughts on Kenny Galladay? No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to get into that.
It proved Matt Stafford was a great quarterback, because great quarterbacks can elevate their receivers.
That's right.
Moving on.
That's right. So I'll get into my trade here, and I think we're all kind of on the same page. The first thought I had, like I said, is, what does this team need? And I was like, it just needs to consolidate. That's really the only thing I could come up with. Was like, I want to have a Pat Mahomes. I want to have a Jamar Chase. I want to have like somebody on this team that is just dominant, set it and forget it. And kind of, you've got the roster space here, to kind of, like you said too, like you've got a bunch of top 15 guys. You know what I mean? Like, well, let's go get a top 3. Let's go build up even further. And so my trade was to send Dalton Kincaid and Aaron Jones or Derrick Henry, whichever one you like least, to varsity squad for Laporta and a bench player that you like. And the idea here is, I think Kincaid is getting a little bit overblown. I think that I would be willing to get out of him. And then that gives you Laporta and McBride. Oh my gosh, that sounds like a terrific starting lineup. And a little bit of a tight end premium still. It's a tight end premium. You only start 9, but you can start both of those guys week in, week out, and they can be dominant with that premium. So I just like the idea of packaging up at tight end to go get the number 1 guy. And most people have Laporta number 1. But Rocky, what are your thoughts on that, or Kincaid in general? Like, where are you at with that kind of trade?
I definitely like the concept of this trade. It's probably even better than mine. Like, it was kind of the same thing I was trying to do, but I don't know if I teared up enough, to your point and to Jeff's point about who's going to start.
Jesse, he is a Bills fan, and Dalton Kincaid is a Bill, which I think is hilarious that you have to put it that way. So that's fair. That's fair.
I maybe should have shot higher than T. Higgins, and that's kind of what you're doing here, which I like a lot. I do think you probably have to include Henry. I just think Laporta's value is so sky high. And I think Henry's value is higher than Jones, in general in the market. So I feel like Henry is still being valued as a late first, and Jones is more of a second round pick kind of value. I do think you need to include Henry, but I think that's not a bad offer. I could still see the Laporta manager turning it down because people love Laporta, and Kincaid is not really proven yet the way that Laporta is. So, but I think it's a fair offer, and if he doesn't want to do it, I think it's a good starting point that maybe you can still work something out.
Yeah, what do you think, Jeff?
When I first looked at this, I wasn't quite sure. I mean, again, I love Laporta. He's a Lion, and I think that he's going to be exceptional. I worry whether or not he's going to be able to repeat his rookie campaign. However, Lions didn't really do anything for the receiving core. So, I mean, everybody expects Jamo to play a bigger role, but that's all, those are all shots down the field. So Laporta's still going to get his in the middle of the field along with Amon-Ra. So I think he's still going to have comparable stats to last year. Kincaid, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks in Buffalo. I know that, they said the 2 tight ends are going to probably get targeted a little bit more. Giving up Jones, I don't have a problem giving up Jones at all. Henry,
I'd rather give up Jones too. I'm with you. I think Henry is going to be.
I'd rather give up Jones. I think you need to give up Henry.
You might, because you might have to, because everybody is so high on Laporta. Heck, he was my second pick in Scott Fishbowl. So I mean, everybody's high on Laporta, and I think
Homer.
you might have to go heavy to really get him if you want it. But I agree with you, Laporta and McBride. Wow.
Whew. Yeah, right. The other trade I kicked around, and I guess I wanted to get your opinion on this. My thought was it's either not enough or too much, and either of those it causes some discussion. And I almost put it on the show sheet, but I didn't want to taint any of your trades. So now that I know that none of you went this route, my other thought was to do send the stack of Tua and Waddle for Stroud, or send the stack of Tua and Waddle for Josh Allen if you're a Bills fan, right? Like I think you might be able to get something like that done, and even if you have to send another piece. Like putting 3 down to go get your boy Josh Allen. If you're a Bills fan, Jesse, that's an option that I would consider as a good bones to start with too. People love stacks, even if they say they don't. It just makes it easier. You know what I mean? Like if Waddle's having a good game, Tua is having a good game, right? So, and I think that way too, you get that team that had Stroud anyway. That Purple Haze team you were looking at didn't really have much outside of that play. So here's Jesse saying in the chat, "Ooh, Josh, yeah, exactly, Jesse, go get your boy." Go. Why don't you have Josh Allen? Like, oh, what are you doing, man? Just for the sake of why not, Scrubs has Josh Allen, and they have Kyler Murray as their other quarterback. They've got some receivers, but nobody terrific. You got Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Christian Kirk. So again, they still have N'Keal Harry, Deontay Hardy, Randall Cobb, a bunch of junk. I think you could maybe make this trade to Scrubs too if you wanted to pull that off. And kind of see if at least test the waters. I'm going to guess they know you're a Bills fan, so you might have to pay a premium there. But then you'd have that Kincaid Allen stack. And again, as a Bills fan, that could be fun to win the league with your boys. So just trying to give you some options here, Jesse. Just trying to give you some ideas. Take these for what they're worth. But I think you are definitely showing off with this team. I really, I'm jealous. I'm a little angry, but ultimately happy that you're part of the family and are doing such a good job in Dynasty because – man, I tell you what, you are right in line to win this one, my friend. I love it. All right. So any other thoughts on this league before we wrap it up tonight, Rocky?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I just want to mention Jesse did say he submitted this one before a lot of trades for running back. So when he sent it, I guess he wasn't showing off quite as much as he is now. But
true. He sent this league back in February. I had to go back into the archives because I was just like, I got to find a Jesse trade. You know what I mean? This is just a Jesse show, so I might as well just finish it off. But I did look at the trades. He did a lot of trades during the draft. He got Travis Etienne for the 108 pretty much, things like that. So his trades are pretty solid. You can look those on MFL, which is nice. So good job, Jesse. You still did a good job. Proud of you.
But
Jeff,
there's just a lot of good trade talk. So I think we're pretty good now.
I think we're good too. So Jeff, why don't you tell people where they can find you and kind of what you got going on? If they got more questions about your referee stuff, all that kind of thing, where can people find you on the main internet spot?
Yeah, I'm on Twixter or X at ffcommish_YIS. Feel free to hit me up there, DM if you have any questions regarding commissioning a league or any ideas that you'd like to share. I'm more than happy to brainstorm with you. Or if you just want to follow some of my beer picks, I post those probably as much as I do football picks. So, find me there again at ffcommish_YIS.
Awesome. Yeah, we got to get somebody to host your referees doc. I think that would be a really good idea to post an article or some sort of write up with all the stuff you got about that. Because I think that would be a really good primer for commissioners, and just to have something to refer to would be really helpful. So maybe we can. Here's Kyle in the chat. Maybe Full Press can help with some of that, or maybe Going for Two or some of those kind of things. So maybe we can find a spot to host that document if you're interested. I'm kind of putting something out there, but
I'm willing to entertain anything. I'm just glad I got through my first podcast.
That's right. Well, again, it was a very congratulations. You did a great job, but it is a very Jesse Shot centered show because Jesse's getting married on Saturday, everybody. So again, I felt like at the least at the end here, I want to make sure I give a congratulations to Jesse. Cheers if you got him, boys. We all got something at least. I don't know. Cheers to Jesse. Congratulations on your trades and your future bride. Love it. With that, we're going to get us out of here tonight. Thank you so much, Jeff, for popping your podcast cherry. You did a great job. I think you have a great voice for this, and people should definitely get you on their podcast more often. I also think that we need more commissioner talk in this world with more leagues. Everybody's starting more leagues and being in more leagues. That means there's more commissioners, and there's a lot more new commissioners. So we need to have more commissioner talk. But after this, Junkies will be back weekly. We kick back into the weekly status here again. So next week, we've got another great guest lined up. I'm not going to spoil it in case something changes. But we've got a lot of good shows coming up for you in August. We're going to do our positional previews like we do as we head into the season. We got a bunch of new Find Me a trades, which is awesome. We love that. Thank you for all of that. Thank you to Jesse, of course, for being here and being in the chat and providing his input. Thanks for Puff Pass Kick. We also had Jerry Bagshaw from across the pond. That's always nice. So yes, thank you for all of that. And thank you for listening. Thank you to Scott Sidlow, who's coming back at Scott_Sidlow. You can find Tommy at FF Tommy B. You can find me at Andrew Hall FF. And then Rocky, I'll kick it to you to take us out of here tonight.
Yeah. So like I said, great talk about the trades. A lot of good Jesse Shot content tonight. Happy to meet Jeff. And yeah, Jeff, as Andrew said, really happy having you here. And you're pretty much a natural at this. You should do some more podcasting if you can. So you kind of shouted out, I think, most of the people in the chat. So I'll just finish up and say Junkies out.